Well, welcome everybody. Today the topic is live your call or live your calling. And I believe that as we discover and live out our true calling, we utilize our special talent or gift, we set things right on this earth. Things work like they're supposed to, personally and in our micro society. And when we get distracted from our gift or we live for other people's dreams, we're not only unfulfilled, but we mess with the flow of the creation. Now is the greatest time on earth to give the gift of us, to give our gift, to uncover our talent, and to live out our call. The opposite of fundamentalism. I woke up the other day with a random thought. What's the opposite of fundamentalism? And that unusual thought, like a fledgling 5.0 rock climber, painstakingly picking her way up the fissure between my left and right brain, grabbed my attention. What is the opposite of fundamentalism? And I got out of bed and gave it a few minutes of quiet thought, stalked into my office, woke up my ever anxious computer, did a Google search, and was quickly informed that there is no direct antonym for fundamentalism. I thought, what? That's weird, that's wacky, that's wild. It shouldn't be that way. And in all the never-ending glut of information and misinformation on the internet, why is there no polar opposite to fundamentalism listed? And I could hardly believe that. And then it hit me. The opposite of fundamentalism is not easy to find because it's persona non grata. You know, it's unwelcome in the staunchly controlled hierarchy of this world. The opposite of fundamentalism annoys the hell out of firm and established pecking orders in society. And any challenge to this world's deeply rooted fear or rear-looking fundamentalist beliefs must be buried at all cost. And here's a quote, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. See, freedom, true freedom, is the opposite of fundamentalism. And freedom is always forward thinking. Freedom is taking what we know to be true and moving ourselves forward, even just a little bit. Freedom scares the hell out of the fundamentalist. Fundamentalism is a disease, and you're the cure. Fundamentalism is forcing free thought and free speech to look backward to what someone else thinks of as good, like the good old days. It's like an escaped POW hunted down and dragged back to his smelly shack. You know, how do we make ourselves free? And the simple answer is truth. Truth makes people free. And the more complex answer to freedom is putting in the time and the work to stay free, to stay true to our individual calling day after day after day, year after year after year. It takes a lot of work to keep ourselves free from the oppressive tyranny of fundamentalism because it's so hard to avoid. It's all around us. You know, living your gift is freedom, and freedom is the opposite of fundamentalism. Now the pecking order. And one of my many cross-country ventures, I attended a Bible college and worked part-time on a farm. And they had 300 free-ranging leghorn chickens and a few cocky roosters. And I had not been raised on a farm and was puzzled when I became aware of the firmly entrenched hierarchy amongst chickens. And I noticed that only one hen had all her feathers, and all the rest had a hodgepodge, in that hodgepodge brood, had their feathers in differing amounts of plumage. And I asked a farmer what was up. You know, why do they all look different? And why do some hens have all their feathers and others have very few? And he said, boy, that's the pecking order. He said, every hen in the brood pecks the feathers off off the ones of lower status, and all the way down to the bald one in order to establish dominance. And so I finally understood what the term pecking order or hierarchy or the systematizing of societal behavior meant. The chickens pluck each other into place. And we humans are not much different, but we changed the first letter of that word pluck. You know, chickens are genetically suited to both enforce and to allow the pecking order. I said enforce and allow. And the dominant hen retains all her feathers while the most submissive hen runs happily along almost nude. It's her place and she knows it. Now, high school, churches, Islamic terrorists play much the same game. It's a pecking order. And to know where one stands and to know the pecking order in one's chosen society is comforting to the fundamentalist. It's tribal. It's easy. It's the way the world is organized and people are to be controlled. Think back to your high school days. Was a mathlete thought of and treated as highly as a star football player? Not usually. You know, who set up the hierarchy of that school anyway? Who established the pecking order? Who establishes any pecking order? It all starts when people are kids. You hang out with a few kids, and there's always one who's going to try to boss you around. And there's somebody who's going to keep their mouth shut, and it works that way. And in Ephesians 4:14, from the Voice, it says, then we will no longer be like children, tossed around here and there upon the ocean waves, picked up by every gust of religious teaching spoken by liars or swindlers or deceivers. Instead, by truth spoken in love, we are to grow in every way into Him, the Anointed One, the head. And this course of the world is strictly controlled by fundamentalist teaching. And fear of not fitting in keeps us in check. You know, to us, it's stifling. To me, it's stifling fundamentalism. And fear organizes and controls the pecking order. Fear of being exposed, expelled, being different. They all manipulate us like a gullible child. And that's the course of the world. It's the course of the world. Now, the whole point of this teaching is to help us see or re-see what our original calling is. Who are you really? Hebrews 2:15 from King James says, and to deliver them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. See, it's the fear of death or the consequences or the things leading up to death that keep people in bondage. And there's a great quote by Stephen Pressfield from his book, Turning Pro, page 53. Quote, fear is the primary color of the amateur's interior world. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of looking foolish, fear of underachieving, and fear of overachieving, fear of poverty, fear of loneliness, fear of death. But mostly what we all fear as amateurs is being excluded from the tribe, i.e., the gang, the posse, mother and father, family, nation, race, religion. The amateur fears that if he turns pro and lives out his calling, he will have to live up to who he really is and what he is truly capable of. The amateur is terrified that if the tribe should discover who he really is, he will be kicked out into the cold to die. You know, fear runs the world. Fear runs the stock market. What happened in Europe on Friday? Stock market drops over 600 points. It's just fear. Fear of what's going to happen. It's the instability. And they just control people it just controls people to stay on board and to keep in check. It sets the pecking order, this fear. See, truth when lived, when we live out our calling, when we be true to who we're really meant to be, when that it'll eradicate fear just a little bit at a time. Just stay true to who you are. And don't try to fit in with society. You can't. You really can't. You're not designed to, especially as a Christian or a truth-believing person. See, what the hierarchy does, or what fundamentalist belief does, it's always taking you backwards. It's taking you back to the past, what somebody else's glory days from 400 years ago, from 2,000 years ago. That's not what it's designed to be. People say, oh, if we could just get back to the way they did it in the first century. That's not what God wants. He wants us to live it now with the tools that we have and the information we have and the technology we have. It's different. You never go backwards. You didn't see Jesus Christ going backwards. He scared the hell out of the religious people. See, truth lived, our calling acted on, our gift in operation beats the pecking order every time. Cowboy boots. Our 2 children are always with us during our many adventures. And my wife and I moved 27 times in 30 years. And at an early 80s whistle-stop farm/Bible experience, our only son had already been born. And he was maybe 3 when we first went to work. He first went to work with me on this farm. And I entered the free-ranging hen house to feed and water the hens. And my son, not much taller than an adult rooster, was walking right behind me. And he was wearing a sleeveless shirt, little brown shorts, and a pair of special hand-me-down, pointy-toed cowboy boots that had been given to him by a woman with 2 older sons. They outgrew him. And the hens went nuts when they saw him. And they flew at him like he was a red-headed stepchild. And because he was closer to their size, and they were going to put him in place, his place in their pecking order. And what he did next just seemed to come natural to him. He put on a straight face, sort of put his lips together, and he focused, and he showed no fear. And he just walked forward between the roost, kicking up his little tan legs, armed with his latest gift, those pointy-toed, hand-me-down cowboy boots. The chickens felt the sting, and the hens quickly left him alone. And with his determined mindset to show no fear, not to mention that gift of pointy-toed cowboy boots, he made himself impervious to their pecking order. He still is. Romans 8:15 from the King James. For ye have not received the spirit of bondage again to fear. Fear makes a person stop seeking and begin to look in the rear view. It's a hard place to drive when you're always looking behind. And this pecking order is fear-based. It's important to know this because this is how the world's manipulated. And if we can somehow avoid that and getting trapped in there because we so want to fit with everybody else, we'll do well and we'll do our part and we can change the world. All cultures are held together with some type of pecking order. We all want to fit in, even knowing that we really don't. And if we really want to transform ourselves into that successful and ideal version of ourselves, we don't really want to conform. Romans 12:2. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's just changing your mind every day, every moment, every thought. We don't let the world control us. It's hard not to. We wear hairstyles now that look different than in the 70s. We wear different clothes, different glasses. We talk different. There's things you could say then you can't say now. Somebody's going to get on you. Things you could do with your children then that you couldn't do now. Now I'm sure they wouldn't let me take a child into a hen house. And somebody would be mad because he kicked him with pointy boots. Better than getting poked in the eye. You see, so Romans 12:1 and 2 from the Message. So here's what I want you to do, God helping you. Take your everyday, ordinary life. You're sleeping, eating, going to work, and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit into it without even thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You'll be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you always dragging you down to its level of immaturity, God brings out the best of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. You want something in life? Put the work in and go get it. Put the work in and go get it. If something's not going your way, that doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Make your life an offering to God by living out loud, by living out your calling. That's all God wants us to do. Who are you? What's your purpose of being here? What am I supposed to do with that purpose? And it'll change as your life changes too. It'll become clearer as you become clearer. I had a Christian woman at work tell me that she felt she had been under a considerable attack last week. And she knew she was being hammered by some unseen force because everything seemed to be going wrong. And she thought I was going to commiserate with her and sympathize with her. But I said, you must be doing something right if you're getting kicked around and attacked. You know, anytime we try to better our situation, there's always going to be something to challenge us and try to stop us. It always works. You go on a diet, somebody brings you a cake. You start exercising, something happens. You know, your job hours get changed. You start a new relationship, something happens. There's always something happens when you try to better your situation. That's the way of the world because you're not fitting anymore. And so there's going to be resistance. But you keep moving forward. Keep doing what you're doing. And then a smile dawned on her face, and as she slid her laptop into her attaché, and she stood a little taller, started walking out of the office, and then turned around back at me, and she said, "Thanks. I needed to be reminded of that." Just because bad stuff is happening doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. That's how the world stops you from doing the right thing. It just keeps pecking at you, pecking at you, pecking at you. Well, we don't need any we got too many peckers on earth, right? You know? I mean, they just want to keep pulling out your tail feathers until you look like the lowest of the lot. But we're not. We're the highest. You know, we're going to beat the established pecking order by being intently forward focused, like my son was. You see, by becoming devastatingly good at our gift. What is your gift? By staying true to our calling every single day. What's your calling? It doesn't mean you're a minister or a Bible thumper and you got to quote verses to everybody at work. That's not what I'm talking. Whatever you're great at, get busy doing. Because you're going to see it's going to open your door for your gift to shine. You're going to reach people in a way that you could never otherwise. I don't care what it is. Is it writing? Is it photography? Is it art? Is it singing? Is it shopping? I don't care. You stay true to your calling. See, we move forward and kick away any bully chickens that try to make us assimilate into their pecking order. That's what bullies usually are anyway, right? Chickens. This ISIS stuff, they're a bunch of pussies, a bunch of chickens. They have to be. They're deadly serious about what they're doing. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes because it's the greatest example right now of a pecking order, of fundamentalism. Romans 11:29 from the AMP. And for the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable, for He does not withdraw what He has given, nor does He change His mind about those to whom He gives His grace or to whom He sends His call. See, God never takes back what He gave you, and you've been that person since you were born. Who you were as a child before the world turned you and corrupted you, that's who you're supposed to be. I don't mean act like a child and drool. I'm talking about that personality. There's nobody like you on earth. There's something unique about you, something special. How do we get back to that garden, so to speak? How do we get back to being that person that we're designed to be before fear started taking up residence and ruling us and trying to manipulate us into what it wants us to be? Some mediocre shadow being of who we're supposed to be. See, my son's gift that day was his hand-me-down pair of pointy-toed cowboy boots. And he used them that day to their fullest potential. But what's your true, real, God-given gift? What are you doing with it, if you know it? And your gift and calling will change the world like those pointy-toed cowboy boots disrupted the hen's pecking order. I got a story I'm going to share about Adolf Hitler in a few minutes that'll blow your mind. Backward or forward? Forward or backward? Again, what's the opposite of fundamentalism? To help us to come to our own definition, let's look at a few of the many synonyms of fundamentalism. It means to be biased, close-minded, dogmatic, inflexible, intolerant, narrow-minded, orthodox, puritanical, staunch, stiff-necked, uncompromising, unrelenting, unrepentant, and unyielding. Is that how you see yourself? But that's what a pecking order does. You do not try to break out, or you will be kicked out of the tribe, out of the pack. You know, fundamentalist is always looking backward and accepting no one who's a forward thinker. It scares them. They hate freedom. A forward thinker is the only one who makes a positive impact on this earth. Think about it. It's never anybody who tries to take you backwards. It's always somebody who wants to propel you forward. Gosh, if it wasn't for women, we'd still be running barefoot with sharp sticks. 'Cause that's all a guy wants to do anyway. You know, we'd be just fine. Until she said she wanted that leopard skin, loincloth, Then comes the problem. Well, but that's the life we live now. You see, we live in a complex society, but we're complex people. We're complex creatures. We can handle it. You see, a fundamentalist or a group empowered by fundamentalism can't see past the past. They want to bring you back to the 1400s or to the first century. That was the good old days. No, it isn't. It was for the people living then. The good old days are right now. It's all we have. All these people pining away. There's cultures that try to live in the past. No electricity, no running water, no this, no that, thinking that they're going to be a pure species of people. They're not. You see, they're trying to get everybody else to comply with what they think worked in the past, their good old days, their glory days, and they'll go to any length and any expense to make this happen. And look no further than the current threat, ISIS. In a few years, it'll be something else, but this Islamic-based fundamental terrorism, you see, they're totally unyielding, incredibly backward, and downright evangelical. The Christians could learn a lot from them. They're doing anything in their power to move their philosophy, and it's working. Why would we want to go backwards? I don't. I don't want to live in the 14th century. You see, why would anyone want to rehash the past when we can change for the better at any time? No matter how bad we've messed things up, we can change. There's a new start. You can start again right now, tonight, tomorrow. You see, going back in time is just going to make things worse. Imagine if you had that opportunity. Imagine if everybody had the opportunity to go back in time. I made enough of a mess the first time. I remember a short story I read in elementary school that changed my mind about messing with the past. And it was about a time machine that could take a group of kids back to the prehistoric days. And once there, everyone had to stay on this assigned path and touch nothing. And one student stepped off the path just a little tiny bit and crushed a simple, colorful, ancient butterfly. Upon returning to their proper time period, they noticed that the alphabet was off just by a few letters. And everything was just a little bit askew. Everything looked different. Buildings, everything was just a little bit different. All signage, all books were just a little bit different from the world they left just a few hours prior. Everything changed for the worse because they messed around with the past. I learned something as a little 4th or 5th grader. Don't go backwards. And just trying so hard to fit in to that pecking order, you're always looking backwards. You're always looking at some standard from the past. I remember thinking, why would I want to go back in time to mess things up worse than they were before? I think that was the point of the whole little story. But much of Christianity today is a shadow of what it was in the first century because people aren't living their gift. They're not performing because they're so bent on performing what they think is ancient ritual. They think you have to do things a certain way or how their grandma did church. That's not what God wants you to do. How grandma did it worked for grandma. How do you do it? How do you live the word? How do you walk in love? It's different today. See, religion as opposed to freedom and truth crushes and curtails our dreams, thus stifling our individual gifts. Religion is based on hindsighted fear. Truth is based on forward-thinking freedom. Proverbs 29:25 from the Voice. If you fear other people, you're walking into a dangerous trap, but if you trust in the eternal, you will be safe. The same verse in the Message. The fear of human opinion disables. Trusting in God protects you from that. And trusting in God is trusting in love. Trusting in God is trusting in the light. It's trusting in truth. Remember, the truth sets you free. So anything other than the truth has to be moving forward. You got to catch that truth. You got to chase that truth. Anything else will set us backwards. Fearing what others think is our greatest disability, according to that verse. It's powerful. It's big juju. You see, it's big magic. It's big power. What other people think. That's what kept the tribe together. Any tribe, any tribal society, it's a fear of being expelled. Fear of what other people think if you step out of line. And they'll make sure you stay in line. In a small enough group, worked in high school. Worked in Boy Scouts. Whatever group you've been in, you understand. Trusting in truth, trusting in your true calling, heals soul rot. Because when we go backward, our soul is rotting inside of us. And that's why we're so miserable. That's why we feel so beat up at times. That's why things just don't go the way we want them to consistently. Now, sometimes it's because you're doing the right thing. Sometimes because we don't expect anything. I understand the need for certain fundamentals in sports. I'm not saying fundamentals are bad, okay? You need it in sports. You need them in health. You need them in life. But I'm repelled by the idea of expected conformity at the expense of giving up a little bit of who I am. I've done it for people I work for. I compromised. And then you live with that then. There's nothing you can do about it except for start over. You do something you're not proud of, somebody else talked you into. It's too late now. But every time I conform like that, I lose a little piece of who I am. Then it's a little more work. It's like walking up a gravel hill. Sometimes you slide back down more than you go forward. It's hard. I tried to chase a deer trail one time. not too long ago, and I was running up this path, and this path turned into a deer path. I thought, oh, I'm just going to go where the deer went. All of a sudden, it just went up at like it was an angle like this. And I thought, well, I'm like crawling and sliding down. I don't have four-wheel drive. Finally, I got to the top, and I said, then the other side was more steep, and it was worse. And I thought, that was quite foolish, Mark. You know, and it was fun to freestyle, but I wasn't in my terrain. I wasn't in my lane, so to speak. See, our freestyle growth and action should make narrow-minded pinheads angry. It's going to make them angry. You're going to make people angry. People aren't going to like you when you live the full you. It scares them. Because they see in you something that they've let go. Fundamentalist, when you start walking free, you start walking with power, you start walking with your gift, with your power, with who you are, it scares the pee-willy out of them. And it makes them look at themselves and they see that they're not rising up, they're not the person who they really know they could have been. Everybody's born with a gift, folks. I don't care what race or religion. Philippians 3, 12 through 15 from The Voice. I'm not there yet, nor have I become perfect, but I'm charging on to gain anything and everything the Anointed One Jesus has in store for me. And nothing will stand in my way because He has grabbed me and won't let me go. Brothers and sisters, as I said, I know I've not arrived, but there's one thing I'm doing. I'm leaving my old life behind, putting everything on the line for this mission. I'm sprinting toward the only goal that counts, to cross the line, to win the prize, to hear God's call to resurrection life found exclusively in Jesus the Anointed. But I like that we want to head toward our goal, who we are. Live out your life. Live out your life. I heard somebody say a number of times, at the end of my life, I'd rather have the blotted page of endeavor than the blank page of surrender. How many people, I read a book recently, but it was talking about going pro. I quoted from the gentleman earlier, Pressfield, and he said amateurs, they sit up in the stands, the weekend warriors, and they like watching the games on TV and in the stands. He said, but if you're in that arena, you're going to take your beatings. You're going to get hurt. He said, there's no athlete alive that doesn't play hurt. And if you've been an athlete at all, you understand. You play hurt. And you're going to get hurt, folks, when you're in the game, when you're in the arena of life. That's what Paul's talking about here. I'm not there yet. I haven't arrived, but I'm sprinting toward the only goal that counts. And the only goal that counts for us, really, is who are you? Who am I designed to be? Keep pushing, keep plugging, keep writing, keep singing, keep loving, keep giving the best of yourselves. Keep stepping yourself and your gift forward. Keep moving your gift forward, never backwards. It doesn't work that way. We shouldn't even have a reverse in our life. Live out your calling. Now answer this. What would you do if you were the only person left on earth? The only person left on earth. This will tell you a little bit about yourselves. If you were a true musician, would you keep strumming that guitar or playing the piano? Probably. If you love trail running, would you keep running the trails even if you were the last person? I would. I absolutely would. Usually when you're on those trails, you're all alone anyway. If you love shoes, would you smash your way into the best shoe store and put on those Gucci's, those Jimmy Cho's, or the Louis Vuittons? Yeah, some of the ladies are nodding their heads in here. You see, if you're a writer, would you keep cranking out those stories? If you're the only one alive? Yes, that's who you are. What would you do if no one was around? That's who you are. What would you really do? What's your passion in life? That's your lane. That's your field. That's your trail. That's your story. That's you. You would do what you are. You do what you are. Live out your calling. Live out your calling. If you're not right now, then just work towards that. Maybe your job isn't your dream job, but work your life so you can have that dream job. Work your life so you can live out your calling. Boy, if you could make a living on your calling, oh, how wonderful would that be? Now, a lot of people in the medical field, they do. A lot of teachers do it. A lot of military guys or policemen or firemen, they dreamed of that stuff since they were little. Then there's a time where your life changes and you want to do something else. But you can take what you learned in those fields and move on to something else. Did you know that young Adolf Hitler dreamed his entire childhood of growing up and becoming a professional artist? Being an artist was what he visualized as his calling. He went to art school in Vienna and produced hundreds of paintings. Some art critics say that he even had talent when they were shown those pieces and not told who painted them. And he was especially talented in drawing scenes and architecture. Even during his time as a young soldier in World War I, he set up his easel and spent his idle hours producing art after piece of art after piece of art. After all, he was destined to someday be a professional painter. What happened? What turned this aspiring artist into one of the most hated mass murderers of all time? Well, after being twice rejected by the Art Institute, he gave up and went instead into politics. He gave up on his calling. He sidelined his gift. How much different would the world be today if Hitler had stuck with his true calling as an artist? It'd be a totally different world. Totally different world. How much different would the world be if all of us actually did what we feel that we're called to do? A totally different world. All this unrest that we see in the world is because somebody's not living up to their calling, because of fundamentalism. Does it make any sense to you? They're living what somebody else thought was a good idea some time ago. What are you called to do now and in the future? That's what God wants. The past is past. You can't do anything about it. You never could. But we can always change, right? How much different would the world be if all of us actually did what we feel we're called to do? We can change the world, baby. What are you called to do? Well, what are you good at? What's your passion? What's your hobby? What would you like to be your profession if you could have any profession at all in life? So in closing, my encouragement to you is to pick back up that thing that you once dreamed of doing or you once dreamed of becoming. And this will lead you back to the path God designed for you. And each of us have that path. You were living a little piece of it when you were a child, when you were a toddler, when you were a young person, till the world beat the hell out of you, pecked the hell out of you, see, and putting you in the place. You see, I don't want to live someone else's vision of my life. I want to live God's vision of my life. I want to live my vision of my life. And so do you. See, it's going to lead you back to the path God designed for you. The benefit to you will be personal fulfillment and a much better and safer world. Imagine if everybody lived out their calling. Would there be the problems on this earth like there is now? No. No, because people wouldn't be looking backwards. I believe that as each of us rediscover and live out our true calling, we'll utilize our special talent, we'll utilize our special gift, and we're going to set things right on this earth. at least a little piece of it. You're not going to change the whole world. That ain't going to happen. You can change your family. You can change a little piece of it. You can change a little bit at your job. You see, things begin to work like they're supposed to work, both personally and in our society, if we'll just have the guts and the tenacity to live out our calling. And if you don't know what it is, just take a look. Just think about what you're good at, what you really want to do to benefit you, and because all of you will have something that you want to do that's going to affect other people, that's going to bless somebody else. Even a hobby will lead toward that. See, when we get distracted from our gift, or we live other people's dreams, we're always going to be unfulfilled, and we're going to mess with the flow of creation.